Sue Smith sitting in for Aaron Rand, and we're talking about this Netflix tax today because the government is quietly dropping it. It's not really the name of the tax. That's what it's been called. It's the financial contribution that streamers like Netflix had to pay to contribute to CanCon, Canadian content. It was established under the Online Streaming Act, which was passed by the Liberals in 2023. The government says it will replace it with government funding. It's that it's been eliminated. Kevin Desjardins is the president of the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, and he joins us on the line. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sue.
So what was the tax exactly, Kevin?
Well, it wasn't really a tax.
Right.
It was contributions that the foreign streamers, both video and audio streamers, were being asked to contribute that are very much like the contributions that Canadian broadcasters have to make. Mm-hmm. This is something that Canadian broadcasters have done for decades to contribute back into the system. And so basically the foreign streamers were being asked to do that, to bring some fairness into the system. Mm-hmm. To be frank, they were being asked to do it at a lower level than Canadian media companies were being asked to do it. And they balked at that and I think attempted to put it onto the trade table, even though there's no definition of a trade irritant that this would meet. So that's what that was, and it's kind of helped us to get where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it was dropped? I mean, you seem to be drawing a direct line between the trade negotiations and this? The government says, by the way, it was dropped like a couple of months ago, but they just haven't told us.
Yeah, and I think that that part of the rationale too for dropping this, or for the government to step in to provide funding that had been anticipated coming from the streamers into the system. Part of the reason why the government stepped in is in part because the need for some of that funding to start flowing was quite urgent, and there was a growing sense that with legal challenges coming from the foreign streamers on every decision that was being made by the CRTC to implement the Online Streaming Act, there was no sense of when any of that money was going to start to flow. So I think the government took a pragmatic approach to say, like, we need to get money flowing, and stepped in to do that. But there's still that money hasn't flowed. The decision was made back in June, but the money is not yet flowing, and the policy direction that needs to go to the CRTC to get them to kind of update everything is still something that everybody is waiting for.
What kind of money are we talking about? I mean, I think that the number that the Canadian government is banding about is like $600,000. Is that right?
600 million.
Million. 600 million.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
600 million into the system. 600,000 wouldn't go terribly far.
No.
But yeah, 600 million, which is roughly equivalent to what the estimates were, just in terms of if you were looking at that's the 5% contribution, right, that the streamers were asked to make. Initially would have resulted in a 600 million approximately contribution back into the system. So that 5% is what the government was looking to attempt to replace. It was based on their revenues in Canada, and I think that those revenues would continue to grow. So if that was to be replaced by government funding, it would need to match that sort of growth that would have been anticipated from the streamer contributions.
So I'm just adding a couple of extra zeros there after the 600. So 600 million. So the fact that it's been dropped, this tax, like how big a deal is that from your point of view? Like what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, ultimately, I think that for us, there needs to be fairness and equity in the system between how Canadian broadcasters are treated and foreign streamers are treated.
Yeah.
Like they are drawing about $10 billion in revenue out of Canada, or that's what their projections are in terms of where they're going to be within a few years. So, $10 billion in Canadian revenues that basically leave the Canadian economy, and not only that, but if they have favorable rules for them, it's hard to drive investment in the Canadian broadcasting system when everybody knows that the better investment is in foreign broadcasters. And then if you've got rules that are slanted against Canadian broadcasters, it's hard for them to basically survive in that scenario. So, for us, we ultimately think that the streamers will have to make some sort of contribution. The government has told us that in the long term that they believe that the streamers are going to make some sort of contribution. And for us, we just think that it needs to be fair and equitable as to what the Canadian broadcasters are being asked to do, because we can't hold up the entire Canadian media ecosystem by ourselves.
No, and I mean, I have to say, it does sound kind of like these little incremental steps and back and forth. And, a lot of people today have been making the point, well, because apparently the government has been saying, it's affordability. We want to do it so that, Netflix is more affordable. Well, obviously you have to pay more taxes for to make up that $600 million. But so what would you like to see government do then? What's your message?
Yeah, look, I think in the short term, I don't disagree with the decision that the government took to put money into the system and to help support some of the areas that are most in need of support, like news. Like news is one of the things that the presence of the foreign streamers in the Canadian market, it's kind of broken the cross-subsidy that there used to be between entertainment programming and the news, because, an entity like, say, CTV would, have the entertainment programming, and then that would help to pay for the news on the other side. Well, when you have Netflix that doesn't do news, that doesn't have any connection to Canadian communities, and not to pick on them, but Disney and Amazon and whatever. It means that there is a gap that's created and there's a need that's created. So we appreciate the fact that the government identified news as a priority, is trying to get money flowing into that. In the long term, I think that we just need to see fairness in the system. We need to make sure that, if Canadian broadcasters are being asked to contribute 25% of their revenues back into the system to help support all sorts of other businesses like production companies and music labels and all these sorts of things. Ultimately, that's not a long-term solution to have a higher obligation on Canadian companies as opposed to foreign ones.
Of course, there's always the people that say, well, then, that the companies that can't survive without those subsidies should just, free market. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I mean, it's not a free market when Canadian broadcasting is one of the most heavily regulated industries in Canada, and that we have no barrier to market entry for foreign players. Yeah. So, that's, if you want to talk about free market, and if we want to get to a point of saying that we need to deregulate the Canadian broadcasting system, we're open to having that discussion. But you can't continue to regulate this industry as though there aren't a multitude of foreign and American players who are in the system who are basically using their global reach and their size and strength to be able to create a dominant position for themselves in the Canadian marketplace.
Yeah, it's kind of alarming when you put it that way. Well, listen, great to talk to you, and we'll follow this story, obviously. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, my pleasure. happy to talk about it anytime.
Okay. That's Kevin Desjardins. He's the president of the Canadian Association of Broadcasters, reacting to the quiet dropping of that so-called Netflix tax, which is on foreign broadcasters who had to pay 5% in order to support Canadian content, and that has been dropped.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.